Alright, so welcome to the replacement. So since we've been going through a lot of palming stuff with the palming livestream lectures lately, I just thought it would be interesting to go into a move where you can actually go out of palm rather than going into palm. So this is the replacement, which is just a move that allows you to move a card that you have palmed back onto the top of the deck. So it's a pretty dramatic name, but don't be fooled by that. It's a fairly simple move. Most people know how to palm cards, but they don't really know how to get rid of the palm cards, which is why I'm presenting this. So here's one of the techniques from a book that everyone knows about, and that's why I'm presenting it to you. Honestly, I really haven't seen any other books or videos that really go through this move, which is sort of interesting. The first and only time that I've actually seen this move in print is in Card Control back in 1946 by Arthur Buckley. This is called The Replacement, and if you own the Dover edition like I do, it's found on page 62, and it's a fairly small entry over there. What's really interesting is that most of the time when it comes to replacements, you'll see that it's a right hand that relaxes and they just sort of add the card onto the top of the deck, which is sort of lazy, right? I mean, it's lazy, but it's actually kind of optimized because, I mean, if the best way to get a card out from the palm of the hand is just relaxing and letting it drop through your fingers. So it's quite interesting that this move actually takes a different turn, and you'll sort of understand what I mean when you get into the basic mechanics of the move. So it's a pretty interesting move, but there's actually a move that's kind of similar to the replacement that's found in Jacob Daly's notebooks back in 1972 by Dr. Jacob Daly. This is idea number 253. So it's sort of a similar move where he actually buckles the cards, but instead of using his left thumb to actually pull the cards back onto the top of the deck, he uses his right middle finger to square up the palm cards with the rest of the deck, which I'm not too sure how that actually works. I tried it and it didn't really feel too comfortable, but it's a buckling action to replace the palm cards, so it's similar enough but still different, but I still felt like I needed to mention it and put this in here. So yeah. Alright, before we explain the move, I'll go over the main mechanic behind the move. So what you're going to do is that you're going to have a card palmed, or you're going to have multiple cards palmed in your right hand. Alright? So what we're going to do is that you'll notice that when you palm a card, the card is actually buckled. It's actually bent into your palm, right? So right now you'll see that conforms to the shape of my palm. But what's interesting about it is that if you actually apply the correct amount of pressure and in the right direction, you can actually get the card to bend the other way. Like so, to bend away from the palm of your hand. So this is fairly simple. What you're just going to do is that you're going to bend your pinky. So it's just a very simple bend. At the same time, you're going to flex the fat of your thumb outward, so towards the palm card. And what this does is that it actually causes the palm card to actually not like this, to just buckle away from your right hand. So it's just a very simple flex, right? So it's like, So you know how you got puff up your chest sometimes? You're basically doing that with your hand, right? You're just puffing this out, and this causes this card to buckle outwards, like so. And that's the main mechanic behind this move, right? It's just a simple buckling away from your palmed hand. All right, fairly simple. So yeah. So you're gonna have the card that you want to replace palmed in your right hand, and yeah, that's that. All right. So the deck is in a left-hand dealer's grip. So what you're gonna do is that the right hand actually approaches the deck, sort of to go into a right hand bill grip, and as it actually approaches the deck, you're going to execute that buckling action. So it's just going to go forward. You're going to buckle this card over here, like so. You're then going to extend your left thumb, and it's going to go in between of the space between the buckled card and the palm of your hand. Just going to go in between of this gap. And now it's just going to pull this card downward. So it's just going to pull it, and then it's going to go square on top of the deck like so. Right? And That's the move. That's basically the move. So this should all be done as a transfer to a right hand bill grip action, right? So it's just this, right? And that is the replacement. Actually, you know what? I should do it face up. So it should just be this, right? Now, because your right hand isn't completely parallel with the deck, so you can see that for a bill grip, usually sometimes it's sort of off to the side. Because it's not completely parallel with the deck, rather than pulling the cards directly down onto the deck, which will cause this card to actually become angle jogged, you might need to pull it slightly upwards as well, or slightly downwards. It really depends on how your right hand is placed. Depending on how your right hand is placed, you might need to adjust where your thumb lands and pulls. All right, so it's a buckle. This buckle card kisses the top of the deck, and this thumb lands sort of near the center of the deck and just pulls it square with the rest of the deck, like so. Okay, so that is the replacement. Not as daunting as it sounds, right? It's a fairly simple move, and it's just mainly just a buckling action, and then your left thumb squaring the card into it. For multiple cards, it's going to be the exact same thing. Nothing's going to change about it, because all the cards will remain in unity. All the cards will remain as one, even if you pull the cards, right? So if we do this with, if they're face up, right? Same thing. Your left thumb goes, touches the center of the card and just pulls it, like so. And that's the replacement with multiple cards. Now there's a number of covering actions regarding the replacement. One of them is obviously just a squaring action. So if you have a card palmed, you execute the replacement and then you just go into a squaring action. But obviously a squaring action looks kind of odd if you don't really have anything to square up. So in that case, you could spread the cards or do whatever, have like a messy deck, execute the replacement, and then square everything up. And under the guise of squaring up the deck, you execute the replacement. Okay? The next is that you're going to cut the deck. All right? So you have a card palmed. What you're going to do is that you're just going to cut the top half. And as you go to grab the second half, you're going to execute the replacement. And then you're just going to complete the cut. And this keeps the top card, well, on top of the deck. So if you want to do a top stock retention or whatever, you can execute a palm, cut, replacement, and then table it back, and it remains on top of the deck, right? So fairly simple, just like so. The other thing is that you can do a transfer from a left-hand dealer's grip to a right-hand dealer's grip. So this is the one that basically the book recommends you to do, and the one that I've sort of explained throughout this video. So it is a palm, and as you execute the replacement, you just pull this here, and then you transfer it into a right hand bill grip, like so. Okay, fairly simple. Next thing that you can do is a riffle. A riffling action is fairly easy because you're basically already in position for a riffle, right? You execute the replacement, and because your thumb is already lying on across the top of the deck, it's fairly simple. You just gotta move the deck upwards like so, and then you just riffle these cards. All right? So everything's already in place for a riffling action, right? You just execute the replacement and just riffle, right? All you need to do is just a forward action and then riffle, and that hides the replacement. The last thing you can do is just a thumb fan. So here you have a card palmed, execute the replacement, move the deck upwards just like with the riffle, place your thumb in position for a thumb fan, and then you could just execute a thumb fan. And that causes a replacement, just like so. Okay? So those are just a couple of covering actions regarding the replacement. Now what's really interesting is that something that I found out while playing around with this move is that you can actually use this as a classic palm to cop transfer. So most of you probably do one of those classic palm to gambler's cop transfers, but I don't really like the one that most people do, which is just this one, because you end up with a bad gambler's cop, right? So mostly when people do this, they just end up pressing this card against the palm of their hand, and then they show this card empty, right? But that's not how you actually do a gambler's cop. That is a bad habit. Again, I published a video on the gambler's cop. Judging from my release schedule, it's probably released like last week, so you can go check that out. So this is not how you do a gambler's cop, but because people see you do this, people see you press this card against your palm and then show this hand empty, you end up with a very poorly executed gambler's cop. And so that's why I also don't like hand washes. Hand washes just look really stupid. You never end up with a hand wash that looks nice because you just who does this, right? Okay, so you know how like flies, they land on there and then sometimes you see this, and this feels like the magician's equivalent of that, because then you just see a magician with palm cards and they're just doing this. It's like, what are you doing? Can't you do anything normally, right? So I never really liked hand washes because they just don't look nice, right? So yeah, I mean, realistically, external reality wise, if you do a hand wash, if you want to show both of your hands empty, you would just do this, right? There's no reason for you to do this. And so I always hated hand washes. I don't know why I went into this rant, but that's something, right? But anyways, so basically to do the replacement bat as a palm to cop transfer, you're just going to do the move normally, but instead of holding the deck, you're just going to have an empty left hand. So your two hands are going to come together, and notice how my left hand isn't actually flat. It's actually slightly angled towards my right hand because I want this hand to be prepared for a gambler's cop, okay? So my right hand approaches my left hand, and now all I need to do is I just execute the replacement, okay? I execute the replacement, and basically I line the top right corner with the pad of my middle finger, and I line the top left corner with the crotch of my thumb over here. So I'm basically lining up these corners for where they are when they're in the gambler's cop, okay? So once they're in optimal position, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my left thumb. I'm going to stick my left thumb in there, just like with the replacement, and then I'm just going to grab this card in a gambler's cop, okay? And so that's basically what the palm to cop transfer is using the replacement. It's just the same thing, except that you're using it to transfer a card into a cop. And the justification for that, it can be to reach for something, right? So since this hand is empty, presumably you gave this deck out, right? You gave this deck out, and then you can execute a palm to cop transfer, grab the deck back, and then you can replace this card back to the bottom. All right, so that's just a brief idea. So the advantage of using this palm to cop transfer versus this other one is that there's no weird flattening of the right hand. So when you realize, if you check this one out, there's this weird flattening of both hands because you need to flatten this out to transfer this card, right? For this one, there's not really that because there's still a fair amount of distance between the two hands, and this hand is still, both hands are relatively bent as well. And the other thing is that you don't need to do the gambler's cop improperly, right? You don't need to flatten this card up against the palm of your hand. They're both, the gambler's cop technique is still good, right? It's still proper. So now you still have good angles versus the improper one, which is flat against here, and you can see the angles like so. Okay, so those are two advantages for this particular palm to cop transfer versus the one that most people know of. So here are just a couple of applications regarding the replacement. Yeah. So again, it could be used as a replacement. That's the primary use, I know. So it's just a replacement right to the top of deck. You can use it as top stock retention. Again, like I said, if you want, you could cut the deck and then execute the replacement, and that is technically a top stock retention. Or if you want, you can palm like a fair amount of cards, give the deck for people to shuffle and cut, execute the replacement, and that keeps like the top stock intact. You can use it as a color change for whatever reason. I don't know why. Right, you can use it as a color change. You can use it as a production. Right, if you have a card palmed here, you can also use it as a vanish. Again, I wouldn't recommend you to use any of these applications besides just the replacement, because that's what this move is used for. But there's nothing wrong with tinkering with things, you know? So yeah. You can also use it as an addition. So you have a small packet over here. You can have a card palmed if you want, and then just have the card added onto the packet. You can also use it as a load if you want, right? Just loading this card elsewhere. Because, I mean, the moment you buckle this card, this exposes this upper left corner, which means that you can actually slip this card pretty much anywhere if you want. You can slip it in your pocket if you want. So yeah, that's just a brief little idea with the replacement. But again, use it as a replacement or just tinker around with ideas. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, but realistically, you should probably just keep it as a replacement. But if you want, you can always tinker around with the moves. There's nothing wrong with that. And that was the replacement. That is just a brief little video on covering on how you can actually replace the card that is palmed in your hand back onto the top of the deck, and yeah, just get rid of it, right? So obviously, if you're curious about this move, you can learn more about it on Card Control by Arthur Buckley, Confident Deceptions by Jason Ladani, The Magic of Ascanio, More Studies of Card Magic by Arturo de Ascanio. I'm butchering my Spanish so badly. The Paper Engine by Aaron Fisher, Vernon Chronicles Volume 1 by Di Vernon, written by Stephen Minch. Those are all great resources for you to look at different replacements of palm cards onto the deck. So yeah, I highly recommend that you look at all of those. And that's the replacement. Yeah, there's pretty much not much else I can say about this. People are always so obsessed with palming, and they tend to actually forget that there are actually, you know, there's an after palming. There, that makes more sense. There's an after to palming. There we go, that makes more sense. So people always get into palm, but then they're like, what do I do with it, right? Because I mean, card to pocket is not the only application for palming. If you're learning palming solely for card to pocket, that's wrong. That's not particularly wrong, but palming is, again, much like any other sleight, it's a tool. You can use it in so many other variety. You can use it in so many other various applications that only using it for card to pocket seems sort of a disservice. So I highly recommend you to look at different effects that all use palming, and you'll find that there's so many out there, good ones out there, that yeah, just makes so much sense. And yeah, so it's nice to just remind people that there's more to learn, that there's different types of moves, and yeah, it's you guys should probably learn how to replace cards back to the top of the deck as well. Alright, well, that's gonna be it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hope you practice replacement well, and see you guys next time.